I'm Beverly, and I'm on the witness stand. Welcome back to the witness stand, everyone, where we go for our second episode on the Lindsay Clancy murder trial. This week started out boring, but man, did it finish up. So let's get started. I'll introduce you to the attorneys here. The prosecution, or the state side, you have Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Sprague. The second attorney, I guess she's like first chair, second chair, I'm not really sure, but she is also prosecuting, and her name is the Assistant District Attorney Amanda Fowl. Okay, so that's your state side. Okay, let's talk about the defense attorney. He is Kevin Reddington, a Massachusetts criminal defense attorney, and boy, let me tell you something. When you see him, he looks a little sleepy and tired, and you know, he's older, but man, he can tear it up in the courtroom if he needs to. And we got some of that this week. Let's summarize real quick. Week one, this case sits at the intersection of postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis, two totally different things. Criminal responsibility, mental illness, and the insanity defense. And then how are the courts going to deal with competing psychiatrists, because you know the state's going to come up with some and the defense are going to come up with some. So it's going to be interesting. So now we're going to review courtroom day 5 through 9. And there was two very significant incidents that I will tell you about as we get there, but I'm digressing, so let me get on. First of the week was monotonous, and I'm just going to say that right out. It had EMS, paramedics, fire, patrolmen, detectives, EMS, fire, paramedics, all of those people who were at the scene. And when you're going to a scene like that, one police officer does not go in there. There's 3 or 4 going into the crime scene. Now, every one of those testified, and when they testified to the exact same thing, the scene never changed, just the person who was looking at it did. I know that the state is probably trying to drive that point home about how terrible that scene was and make the juries feel some emotion about that, which will help them, I think, see Lindsay in the light of how could a mother do that. But I think when you keep driving it home like that, you have to ask yourself, are you turning the jury off? And as a 13th juror, I'm just telling you right now, I was turned off about it. I honestly just wanted to say, please, I know what was there. Let's move on. It's like a repetitive nightmare. We got it. And then the defense, they stipulated to it. So they got up and they said, we agree. All of this scene was what it was. All of these people saw what they saw. There's no point in hammering it. No point in saying it over and over again. He just wanted to get past that because it was killing Lindsay. You could see it. But it was also doing a number on the jurors. And that was something that he could see. And if you were in the courtroom or the state. But I think the state, Bev's opinion, thinks the state was kind of happy about that. This is our first shocker. So when an ER physician named Dr. Catherine Klings, she was an emergency room doctor that took care of Lindsay Clancy when she came in. I found her testimony to be quite interesting. Now, if I was to go back and I was to look at this, maybe I would see a little bit of a difference, but I'm telling you, I think I've got the gist of it right here. When she testified for the state, and remember, she is a state's witness because the state's putting their case on right now. She testified as if she knew everything. She was on the money. I mean, I thought was a good witness for them. And I thought, yeah, okay, because now you're not really talking about the kids right at that moment. You were talking about Lindsay, and everybody wants to know things about Lindsay because there's so much around the kids, but they don't know that much about Lindsay. The whole time the state was talking to her, I swear she was smiling. She was very personable. She was just very nice, exuding nice, I thought. So I thought this was the way it was. But then the defense got up, and the defense started asking her questions. Her whole demeanor changed. She did not act like she was personable anymore. She did not act like she was forthcoming. What she did, and I think I only saw her smile once. That's the part I'm not 100% sure of. It may have been twice, but I know it was very little. So Reddington kept asking her questions, to which her reply was, I don't recall. She didn't say that much with the state's questioning. So after quite a few of these questions, and I don't recall, Reddington stopped and said, did you review your notes before coming to trial? And she said, I did review my report, but I don't have photographic memory. You didn't have problems with your memory with the state's case. And Robinson kind of stood there, walked back to his table, and he said, but this isn't just any case. This is a murder trial. And I would like to add, of 3 children and an attempted murder of, the mother. Well, murdering herself. And she just kept reiterating that she didn't recall. Now, she answered some questions after he made that comment, but I believe that he got a lot of kudos for that, and I believe that set the state back a little bit, okay? So what I think it also did was give us maybe the first preview of what Reddington's defense is going to be, but I think he is going to be a steamroller when his time comes. But finally, he started responding and crossing the witnesses. But again, there wasn't a whole lot to cross because he stipulated all this stuff in the beginning. State just wanted to drive home the gruesomeness of this trial, and it is gruesome, and we all know that. And that's kind of my opinion as a 13th juror, Bev's opinion. So let's talk about a couple of people who testified. Well, there were several, but let's talk about one in particular, and that's Patrick Clancy. Everybody was paying attention to his testimony, and I will tell you that he just really laid out the facts. At first, I kept watching to see if maybe he was a little medicated, but he wasn't. I think he had just gotten himself trained to just answer the question truthfully and matter-of-factly, and to hold on to his emotions, because there's no way that you could not be emotionless if you were the father. But I think he was just high focused on just answering questions. Now, he broke. It was only when he was asked to describe his 3 children. He said Cora was a princess and she just liked all girly things. And then Dalton, he was a little rambunctious, is what they were saying, was a little rambunctious, but he loved trucks. And Callan, he said he was a happy baby. That's when he broke. But he quickly got his composure back. All right, so right after he testified with that, they presented the 911 call. This was very harrowing. And I say that because of the reports that came afterward, because the judge decided that nobody was going to record that 911 call, that even though the media was in the courtroom, they were not allowed to record it. They had to go on silent. Social media, nothing. It better not. And he said subject to legal penalties. So we didn't hear it. But the ones, like the reporters in the courtroom, they came out and they talked about it. And what they described was an excruciating phone call that Patrick made to 911 talking about his wife, and then he said he had to go find his kids and didn't realize that he was still on the phone with 911 when he ran down the stairs and discovered the kids, and they said it was just awful, screaming and yelling. They had to take a break after that. Jurors, everybody, it was too much. And then when you looked over, because they did pan to Lindsay and they kept the camera on her the whole time the thing was going, she was shaking with sobs. She had her head in her hands. And I could just tell that, sometimes there's just no words. Devastated, there's no words. But she just became distraught, crying audibly. Now, we didn't hear it, but you could tell. There was a big shift in the courtroom after that. Like I said, Jurors were crying. Lindsay was crying uncontrollably. And they went to break just to gain some composure and then come back. Second shocker. Rock your world. I rock your world. Okay, so when they started testimony again, Reddington, you could tell he was perturbed. He was really aggravated with something, but we didn't know what it was. As, viewers, we had no idea what it was. And the judge says, let's go to sidebar. And Reddington said, I don't want to go to sidebar with this. And the judge says, I need to know what you're going to be asking. Reddington again said, I don't want to go to sidebar because, let me get this, remarks that were made on a hot mic. Whoa. Oh my God. What was that? So, of course, they immediately went to sidebar and we can't hear anything. So after the day, you know how the pundits will get on and give their thoughts and the courtroom reporters will come out and tell you. Well, they came out and told us. They said that apparently in the courtroom they could hear the sidebar because somebody heard it and said after the 911 call, the medical examiner got up there and described baby Callan, the injuries, what he looked like, and all that kind of stuff. And again, Lindsay completely lost it and you could hear this now, was sobbing. You could hear that. So again, they went to break. So when he came back in, he was telling the judge that he didn't want to go to sidebar because he didn't want anything heard like the remarks that were made on a hot mic, which they said was Lindsay was crying and then Jennifer Sprague or Amanda Fowl, which was the prosecutors, one of them was caught on the hot mic saying, shut her up. Oh no. So now remember, when we're seeing this, it's not during the trial. This is after the trial and the reporters are telling us. But what we found was they played it back. They went back into their filming and they reviewed that part and you can hear it. And they turned up the volume and you can hear one of them saying, shut her up. So that is what Reddington was pissed off about. And that is what the judge became pissed off about. I don't know if it was like instant replay and they played it for the judge in the courtroom. I have no idea. But honest to God, it was one of those moments. I'll never forget it, that's for sure. After the sidebar was done, the judge gets up, standing up, and he issues a stern warning to anyone in that courtroom. He talks about how, they should know better, pretty much. But anyone saying anything untoward again would be removed and barred from the courtroom for the duration. So if one of those, I don't know what it would be if Reddington did it, but it might be a mistrial. I don't know. But if one of those prosecutors says something like that again and it gets caught, then they will be removed and they won't be allowed to come back in. They'll probably have to bring another prosecutor in, if they want to double chair it. But he said that there were cameras everywhere and they should know better. And when they pulled that footage and reviewed it, they did say it. Now, the first thing I thought about, will this possibly come up as in support of an appeal should she be found guilty? I think so, but again, there's so many things I've thought so before and it didn't happen. So we get another person who's testifying. That's very interesting. And it's Lindsay's ex-father-in-law, Chris. He said that Lindsay was a great mom. He and she had a great relationship, a very good relationship. I don't think he hurt Lindsay's case at all. But he was a witness for the state. I don't know what they thought he did, except for driving home again, that Lindsay seemed perfectly normal and nobody saw anything out of the ordinary, and that this has to be premeditated murder. She can't have been going through postpartum depression or psychosis. But, he said that Dalton, which was the middle child, was very rambunctious and he was a handful. And he said that Lindsay would struggle. He inferred that she would struggle some, but in particular at a dinner they were having, that Dalton wasn't behaving and coming to the table. And he said that Lindsay went and got him and brought him back to the table, but that she just took Dalton's hand and led him back to the chair. And the father-in-law says nothing unusual, nothing that hurting the child or anything, just led him back to the thing. And that was pretty much her normal way of disciplining. He said that they knew that there were some troubles, that mental health struggles, and that he and his wife and Lindsay's parents were going over there and helping every chance they could get because they knew she was struggling. Did that help the state or did that help the prosecution? You might say it didn't help either one, but my thinking was that it helped the prosecution for him to say that they knew something was happening. He said that she looked very tired. And the state brought in a bunch of Lindsay's friends who would talk about how she was a great mother and they were very supportive of her. Some of them did know that she was having some issues. Almost all of them reported that she looked tired and she had said she had trouble sleeping. And that was another thing. Lindsay was going sometimes 48 hours with no sleep. You try that and see how you were acting at the end of it. Some of them said that it looked like she'd been losing weight. Now, the kid's nanny said that she, again, thought she'd been losing weight and that she looked tired and she knew the trouble with the sleeping, but didn't say anything else, like she was in psychosis or anything like that. But she didn't hurt Lindsay either, I don't think. But again, I think the state's trying to build up there was nothing wrong with her. Next, we get to the psychs. And this is what I really was waiting for. I thought it's going to all come down to the psychiatrist. Postpartum depression versus postpartum psychosis. This is where we're going down to it. It's not who did it, we know. It's not what happened, we know when. We just don't know why. And that's what this is coming down to. And guess what? The why doesn't have to be proven. State doesn't have to give a motive. But when you're looking at a case like this, I'm thinking that jury's going to have a good motive in order to find her criminally guilty. So Dr. Jennifer Tufts, Tufts, and Dr. Aaliyah Goodhart, they both work for McLean Hospital, which I think is one of the hospitals, like mental hospitals that, or women's health hospital or whatever. Both of them said that they had not considered Lindsay psychotic or dangerous while they were treating her. Now, right there sounds excellent for the prosecution, but then there's some details. Dr. Jennifer Tufts, who looks like she is in her sophomore year of college. She's not. She's been working as a practicing psychiatrist for 4 years, but she really looks young. She said she'd been treating Lindsay for nearly 3 months through virtual appointments. I don't know, but I think maybe this called for something more than virtual. I mean, I'm all about that, but I don't think something this serious. So anyway, she described Lindsay as becoming increasingly depressed and deteriorating. Her medications were reduced, changed, added, and withdrawn repeatedly during the months preceding the killings. If you know anything about any psych drugs, there's a whole lot that you have to taper on and a lot that you have to taper off, a lot that can't be combined together, a lot that can't be used for one thing but can be used for something else. And a lot of times it takes a while and it takes getting what we call a cocktail. So the problem here was that she was in a very bad place, and you can't deny that. She was in a very bad place, and all of this stuff was happening to her, even being hospitalized. But one of the most striking things to me was that Tufts saw Lindsay the day before the murders. Lindsay told Tufts that she denied being suicidal and homicidal at that appointment, but it was referenced that she had bad thoughts. Okay, but reported that she had to force herself out of bed and force herself to leave the house. That's the day before the killings. Now, the prosecution gets to have this carrot by saying that she denied having suicidal or homicidal ideation. And she was seeing her less than 24 hours before 3 children were dead and Lindsay had attempted suicide. So in less than 1 day's time, she sees Lindsay, she knows she's deteriorating, and then Lindsay kills her 3 children and then tries to kill herself. Okay, then Dr. Aaliyah Goodhart, and this is when my eyebrows went up, she said that she treated her, Lindsay, from January 1st to January 5th while she was admitted to McLean Hospital, a psychiatric facility. Some remarkable facts occurred during that time. According to her testimony, McLean Hospital never obtained Lindsay's previous mental health records. They did not obtain blood testing or formally determine the severity of her postpartum depression during that admission. And Goodhart acknowledged something else. Get this. She is testifying for the state. She is treating Lindsay for her mental health condition, but here's the kicker. She had never treated a patient with postpartum psychosis. How is she an expert witness? Don't you think Reddington scored some points there? Yeah, I think he got a few carrots. Now remember where we are in the timeline. This isn't 6 months before the killings. Lindsay was hospitalized January 1st through 5th. She killed the children on January 24th. That's 19 days after discharge from that psychiatric hospital. Then there's the discharge. This is interesting because the prosecution had been saying that Lindsay wasn't doing what she was told and that she left the facility early. However, there was some context to that, and Goodhart said that Lindsay wanted to be home for Cora's birthday party. And according to Goodhart, she felt very comfortable with Lindsay's discharge, provided that Lindsay arranged a follow-up mental health appointment care and made sure her sleep was being addressed. Don't you think that her sleep should have been addressed while she was in the hospital? So that's quite a different impression from, that Lindsay decided that she had just had enough treatment and she walked out. And I know that Reddington put a circle around that testimony. Lindsay, Goodhart also testified that Lindsay said she wouldn't formulate a plan because of her children and her mother. But that is when you may be in postpartum depression, but psychosis, you can't count on that. You can't. And anytime that you're trying to determine the safety of a patient or someone else, I think you probably should err on the side of caution. But that's just me. Goodhart said she considered postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis during the diagnostic process, along with possible bipolar disorder, but ultimately she diagnosed her with insomnia associated with the mental health condition. No postpartum anything. I mean, people, the woman just had a baby. Does that fit into anywhere? Any woman who has severe depression after a baby, everybody's now thinking postpartum. Why wasn't this on the radar? These are professionals. Anyway, so let's put the pieces together. Insomnia associated with a mental health condition. Here's what you need to think about. Severe insomnia, depression, deterioration, suicidal thoughts, repeated medication changes, psychiatric hospitalization, no prior mental health records obtained by the hospital, a treating psychiatrist who had never treated postpartum psychosis, discharged on January 5th, seen by her psychiatrist on January 23rd, and killed her children and attempted suicide on the 24th. That is the timeline that the defense has been promising, and it's coming. I think that Reddington is going to hit on all of those things that we just said above, and the doctor never having treated psychosis. And also, I think he is going to hit that timeline hard and saying, what else could she do? My God, she's doing all these things that you're saying. She saw so many specialists, and he opened all of that up in his opening statements. So this is going to be interesting. But there is an important counterweight. So Tufts nor Goodhart stated that they never saw Lindsay in psychosis. Neither believed that she was a danger to herself or others in the way the defense is arguing that she was or she became. That's the Commonwealth's foothold. Their argument can be they aren't hired prosecution experts. These are the people who actually treated Lindsay, and they didn't see psychosis. And that's strong evidence. But Reddington is going to come back with, then how did a patient you described as deteriorating go from psychiatric hospitalization to killing all three of her children and nearly killing herself 19 days later? That's a good question for them to answer, and I think it's going to be a hard one for the state to overcome. So I think we're finally arguing the whole point, the whole question here of what this trial is about. What was happening in Lindsay's mind? It was depression, or can you believe that it was right out premeditated murder? What was happening to her mind, and did the people treating her recognize it? I think just with the two testimonies that we've seen so far, they did not recognize it as that, or misdiagnosed and or mistreated. I wanted you to just kind of take away the first part of the week. I was bored out of my skull. The nanny and the friends and the family, the ex-family, all really personalized her and humanized Lindsay and did not give anything negative, I don't think, unless you want to go with that abstract, see, she was perfectly fine. The autopsy testimony reminded us of the horror, and then day 9 changed the whole temperature of this trial with the hot mic episode. So that wraps it up. That's a big one. I cannot wait for next week. So until then, you may step off the witness stand. I'm Beverly, and I'm on the witness stand.